On?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on. So, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. I'll try to recoup a little bit. So we have the English or the Latin or the Greek letter shape of the A. We turn it upside down. It looks like the paleo shape. And then this was the ox head shape. And this was the more rounded shape that you find on some cave drawings. It looks like cavemen drew it. And what I was trying to show you is it's all the same letter, which is the head of an ox. And if you turn the petroglyph sideways, it's where we get the cursive, more rounded shape of the A. And the word Aleph in Hebrew means ox. So if you say, go yoke up the Aleph out there to pull the plow, you're yoking up the ox. But the word Aleph also means 1,000. And it means 1,000. It also means one. So Aleph is the first letter, and it means one, as in number one. But also because Aleph is strong, it means 1,000. So here, I know you don't have a cow outside, but I'll bet you have something that behaves like an Aleph, almost looks like an Aleph, and you can use it the way you would use an Aleph. What is it?
A dog.
No, a dog's a little guy and you throw a stick to him and he
But
chases
a dog
it.
is a big dog and you can...
If you had, listen, we have some little Dachshund and Chihuahua dogs. And if you had all the dogs together and your dog was the biggest one, he might be the alpha dog or the Aleph dog.
Yeah.
But there's something out in the yard that is so strong, it's like an Aleph. It's a bull, like an elephant. Remember, Alps, the same is where they get the same word, which is, like he said, the glaciers are up there, they're beautiful, they're big, they're sharp, they're craggy, and the word alpha, like alpha dog or alpha male, is the chief. What? You have an idea?
The backhoe.
The backhoe! You can use the backhoe, the tractor, as an Aleph. It's like this big, tough ox. And there was a certain kind of ox called a ream ox. Literally, that's exactly what I was thinking. There was this thing called a ream ox, which was actually bigger than any cows we know of today. It was like this giant ox. And
Did they tame it?
you know, I'm not sure if they ever tamed the ream
They have
ox.
to tame it since it's little.
Well, there's little oxes now, but this ream ox was so big and so tough. If you wanted to prove that you were the alpha man, your job was to go kill one of those ream oxes. And apparently Julius Caesar killed the last one, made them extinct. So now they're just, we see maybe, we'd think of them as dinosaur bones, but it's an ox. But it was an Aleph, or a ream ox, an Aleph ox. So what I'm saying is that when I see a big bulldozer like that, I think Aleph. Because when you go to dig a hole, you get that. When you go to, if you were to yoke up an ox and have him pull the plow, he'd be pulling this blade through the earth to rip the earth open. That takes a lot of strength, just like your bulldozer, your backhoe. Good call. Okay, so the word Aleph is spelled A-L-E-F or A-L-P-H-A, so then I'm trying to show you that the F sound and the P-H in Hebrew is the exact same letter, which is a mouth that opens, which is why the letter in Hebrew called Pei or Fei is the exact same letter. And in the modern Hebrew, it looks like this mouth, this shape. If there's a dot, it sounds like a P, and if there's no dot, it sounds like a PH. But to us, the PH and the F is the same sound. So that's why it's either pay or fay, but it's all the same. In paleo, there's no dot, so whether you pronounced it as an F sound or a P sound, it almost doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to show you is that the word alpha means the highest and best, but the word in English, supreme, super, soprano, superior, also means highest and best. And in Hebrew, the word Sepher is the same word. Because the O and the U, which is the letter Vav, is the same sound, just a different vowel. So if we say Sepher, that's the same as, you might say Soper.
Super?
But Soper is not a word because they pronounce it as an F. So for them to pronounce Sepher is really the same spelling as our word super. Super and Sepher are the same exact word. The O and the U is the same letter, just two different sounds. And the P and the F, which is the P and the PH, is the same letter, just two different sounds. Here's the thing. The word Sepher is a scribe. It's somebody who can read. It's somebody who can write. So what I'm trying to say, if you can read and write, it's the highest and best of anything you can do. So you could say, well, what if you were a policeman? Or what if you were a fireman or a doctor or a lawyer or a carpenter? You could say, well, those are all good, legitimate jobs. They're very productive jobs. If you were a cook, if you were an innkeeper, if you were a gardener, those are all great jobs. But the highest and best thing you can possibly do is learn to read and write. It's super. It's Sepher. Now, here's one other way the word works. What do you call a book? Well, in Hebrew, they call a book a Sepher. So you could spell the word Sepher, S-E-F-E-R, or you could spell it S-E-P-H-E-R, because it's the same word. Sepher, S-E-F-E-R, S-E-P-H-E-R. Now, if you were going to go into the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, and you had to figure things out like a detective, you're going to cipher. You're going to cipher evidence. That would be C-I-P-H-E-R, or maybe even C-Y-P-H-E-R. If you have a secret code and you're going to figure it out, you're going to decipher, right? You're going to decipher secret codes. So what I'm trying to show you is that even here, decipher is exactly the same word as Sepher. So we have to have our smartest and best people who can think, as they say, outside the box.
So, just happen to have a box in your
Just
hand.
happen to have a box. If you want to think outside the box, you can get a job deciphering encrypted information. And it's very important for, you might say, national security. So to learn how to read and write is one thing. To learn how to really figure things out, deciphering things, is even more, the highest and the best. So in the olden days, they said if you were the wrong nationality or the wrong, you might say, skin color, they wouldn't let you read. If you were a woman, you were not allowed to read and write. Why? Why do you suppose they wouldn't allow women to read and write, or wouldn't allow somebody of the wrong race or religion to read and write?
Make the boys look cooler.
Huh?
Just kidding.
Okay.
To make the boys look cooler.
Yes,
But
that's one. No, that's part of it. Because part of it is to say men would be smarter, because if you learn to read and write, your mind works differently. So to make the men more alpha, remain superior, they wouldn't allow the women to read.
But that's cheap.
Information is power.
Information is power. So what I'm trying to show you is that Aleph is the letter that represents power. And the letter Lamed, like the rudder, is the tongue, which is the letter that controls the entire ship, which is power. And the Pei is the open mouth of Aleph, which is to say, it's knowing words. The commanding general tells the people what to do, and everybody else goes out and does it and ends up getting shot and killed. So it's the general in the back which is trying to make the decisions. He's more protected, but his brain is the smartest, is the most powerful weapon. More so even than the sharp sticks that people out in the fields are stabbing each other with. What I'm saying is knowing how to think, knowing how to read, putting letters together to figure out words and encrypt meanings is very powerful, very important. It's essential. And if you want to subjugate some other people, so the men subjugate the women by not letting them learn how to read. And then if you have slaves, the first thing they do is they don't allow them to learn how to read and write. When Alexander the Great conquered other nations, he made them all start learning Greek. They couldn't keep speaking their language, because if they spoke their language, they would have independent thought. And he wanted to subjugate them and make them under his authority. Now I know of a certain man that I hired who was telling me a story. His grandmother lived in Alaska. She was a Native American, an Indian Native American lady who spoke her language. The authorities didn't like it. They told her to quit speaking her language, and she wouldn't, so they took a knife and cut her tongue out.
Oh.
The missionaries did. Why? Because her language was a rebellion against their authority. So by making her only speak their language, they had authority. If you learn a different language, you take power. Here's what I'm saying. The reason to learn Hebrew is because this is the way that Yahweh thinks. And He gave us His instructions because His language expresses His heart. And if over the time of history, other kingdoms have taken over Yahweh's people, and the way they retain their authority by giving us imposed culture is by making us speak their language, because language, like a tongue, affects the mind, which then affects the body, which then affects the family, which then affects the whole country. If you can control the language, you can control the heart. It's a matter of putting reins and chains of shackles of slaves. For us to learn this Hebrew, and for me to try to show you the way this Hebrew works, is to set you free from thousands of years of other people trying to control Yahweh's people. So Yahweh said to Moses, write the words that I give you, and then make them well clarified. Make them easy to understand. So I'm trying to do everything I can to help people understand this language, because it's Yahweh's own personal invention. Other people will say that cavemen invented how to speak this way, that they just invented words and syllables. I disagree. I believe that Yahweh Himself invented the Hebrew language. And I could show you why I think that. And that's part of a more developed understanding. But I'm trying to show you the simple basics right now. And all this talk is just about the first letter so that you will understand the way that it works.
We only talked about Aleph.
Pretty much. Well, I mentioned Pei, and I mentioned Vav, and I mentioned the Lamed, and I mentioned the Bet. But do you have any other questions then about Aleph? Okay, I'll show you one other thing about Aleph. Notice it kind of looks like an arrowhead. Okay, so I'm going to turn the page over. If you take an arrowhead, here I'm going to draw a picture of an arrowhead. See, it's got one little thing there like a barb, and then it comes back here. Look at that. It almost looks like the Aleph. See? There's the V shape, and the 2 points coming out this side, and the 2 points coming out that side. It's just, instead of it being open, this is attached, and instead of it being like that, this kind of draws out like that. But see that arrow shape?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what is an arrow? If you see an arrow shape, what comes to mind? What does it mean?
Direction.
It's like over there. Direction.
Okay, so the Aleph, it talks about direction. Now, if you were a hunter and you had an arrow, what does that have to do with direction?
Bow and arrow.
A bow? No, it is a bow and arrow. But what direction are you indicating? If there's a deer over here, and you're going to shoot the deer, you're aiming the arrow directly in the direction of the deer, right? So in other words, when you see an arrow, it means you are probably, here I'm going to draw a stick figure, it means you're standing here, and it means your target, if it happens to be a deer, your target is here. And what letter would you draw to indicate the target, maybe? If you're going to use a letter shape to draw it to indicate that's the thing I'm pointing at, what letter, what shape would you draw?
I'll draw gold.
Or what?
Gold.
Gold? No, I'm not a color. What shape would you draw if you were aiming at a target?
Olive. This one.
Okay, a circle with a T. If you turn the T sideways, it's an X. If I'm going to have a contract and I draw a bunch of lines and I say, okay, sign your name right here, and somebody says, where? We usually write an X and say, right here. Sign an X, right here. An X is the indication of drawing attention to something. If you draw a circle with an X in it, that happens to be another letter. It's the letter Tet. It's a circle with an X. But here, this is the letter Tav, and it's the very last letter, and it happens to be the shape of a T or an X. What you drew, a circle with a T in it, is a gun sight, right? If you have a target, you draw different circles, and then if you're going to indicate a gun sight, you might go like this, and say, okay, it's that thing right in the middle. It's the same shape. It's the T or the X. Why? Because you're bringing it right here, and you know that it's. Do you ever see some kind of book where they show you a treasure map, and there's buried treasure? What shape do they draw to show you where the buried treasure is? An X. It's the same thing. That's the indication of the thing you're looking for. So here's the point. If you take the letter Aleph, and it's pointing in a direction, the X shape in the distance is the target. So in Hebrew, see that blue and white Aleph there? That looks kind of like an arrowhead. And over here is the X. That's the target. It's the first letter and the last letter, the beginning and the end. So there's a Bible verse that says, where Yahweh's speaking, he says, as I have planned. Well, if you take an aim, that's like the Aleph. Now I'm trying to show you that the Aleph is an idea. The Aleph is an idea. Because an idea is a plan. So if you say, as I planned, now you're almost like shooting an arrow at a target. The target is your plan. So when you say, so shall it be, that's like hitting the target. So here's the thing. Your parents have said they planned to invite a bunch of people over and have this Sukkot. And look, we're doing it. It's happening. They hit the goal. The arrow has hit the target. They're doing it. So here's the picture. Aleph is to design something and to make all the preparations and to say, all right, here we go. It's like launching the arrow, and when it's actually happening is this letter Tav. So when Yahweh says, as I have planned, so shall it be, as I have set the purpose, so it shall come about. What he's showing us is the meaning of these letters. Aleph and Tav are just like a man with a bow and arrow. He says, I need to get dinner, so I'm going to get my bow and arrow, and I'm going to find the target, which is maybe a deer or maybe some other, and he shoots it and he hits. But you could say, I'm going to make some lunch. As I have planned, I want to go get a carrot. Well, a carrot's not an arrow. Maybe it looks like an arrow if it's pointy. But for you to say, I have an idea, I'm going to go pull a carrot out of the garden, That's an Aleph. You're planning on doing something. And then you go out to the garden and you look around and you find the carrot and you pull it out. Aha, now I've got the carrot.
And now you.
That's like the Tav, because you accomplished what you did. Now, all through the Bible, there's many places where Yahweh says, I have a plan, and that plan will happen. That's the Tav. He's saying, I made an Aleph, and now that's going to be a Tav. So when you look in the book of Revelations, the last book of the Bible, and Yeshua says, I am the first and the last. In Greek, it's Alpha and Omega, because in Greek, the first letter is an Alpha, just like Aleph, Alpha, and Omega is the last letter, so they have a different type of alphabet. The beginning and the end, the first and the last, he's claiming to be, in Hebrew, Aleph and Tav. Now, it just so happens that in Genesis 1:1, where he says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, there's one word that's not translated. Why don't they give us a translation? So in Hebrew, it says, Bereshit, bara, Elohim, and then there's this one word pronounced et. You'd spell it in English like et, et. In Hebrew, it's spelled Aleph, Tav. The modern Hebrew would look like this. There's an Aleph and there's a Tav. But has no translation. They never translate the word spelled Aleph, Tav. And from what I understand, that even the rabbis do not know why there is an Aleph, Tav there. So when Yeshua said, I'm the Aleph and Tav, he was claiming to be that letter, and what I'm trying to show you is that the letters Aleph and Tav are not just two letters that are floating there with no meaning, but the meaning of the Aleph and Tav is that there was a plan, and then the plan is accomplished. And so Yeshua is the one who is, or embodies, or has control over the entire plan. So this one very mysterious word in the Bible, it's so mysterious, most people either don't know it's there or don't know what to do with it, don't know why it's there. And I'm trying to show you the mystery is in knowing that the Aleph is the beginning of something that ends in Tav. And now here's the alphabet. There's 20 more letters. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Tet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Pei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav.
Oh, really?
That's the Aleph hitting the target. Has to go through all those things. It's like this. Have you ever set up dominoes and knocked them down? Okay, if I had 22 dominoes and stood them up, the last domino's not going to fall down unless I stood them up just right. And then I have to hit the first domino and boop, 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 boop. And when the last one falls, it's like, okay, I accomplished the plan. So the Aleph Tav is not really just the first letter and the last letter, but it's the plan of all 22 coming together and happening. For example, if you have a crew and you say, okay, you're going to get in the backhoe and dig the foundation. You're going to set the forms and pour the concrete. Then you're going to get the wood and build the framing, and you're going to take the wires and run the electrical, and you're going to take the plumbing and run all that. Then somebody else is going to put on the siding, and you're going to paint it. You have to get the entire crew together and work together in sequence, and sometimes on top of each other and overlapping, and then the whole house comes together. So what I'm trying to say is the way the alphabet works is that every one of these letters works like a different man on the crew to make the entire house stand. So then there's stories in the Bible about the Father's house. These letters are the Father's house. Now, he does have a way or some concept that he lives in some kind of place up in the heavens on some other sort of dimension. But what he showed us is that this is his house. Now, I'll show you that for a reason. we have a few more minutes, I think, before we're ready. So I said the Aleph is like the pole that held up the umbrella, which is like the father, right? The strong one of the house that holds it together. There's the dinner bell. Let me finish this one last thing about the bet. The bet is the umbrella covering that you can be in. But the word bet also means one other thing. The word bet means to be taught, trained, and domesticated. Interesting thing. That means to be of the house, you have to learn the rules of the house. Like, take your shoes off when you come in. That's one of the rules of the house. When you hear the dinner bell, quit talking. That's one of the rules of the house, which we'll do in just one second. So here's the interesting relationship between Aleph and Bet. The word Aleph also means to be taught, trained, and domesticated. Just like Bet. So the ox is the animal that can be domesticated and trained, and the word Bet means to now be, because you're trained, you're considered part of the house. So the word Bet can also mean school, and the word Bet can also mean family. It means those people that have come to the agreement that we will all live together by the same terms and conditions so that we will succeed in what we do. And the way you get taught and trained in school, the first thing you have to learn how to do is Sepher, the Sepher. Learn how to read and write the book. So the word Sepher or Sepher is not just book, it's also scroll, but it's learning how to deal with words and letters. Okay, anyway, go ahead and hit that button. So we'll have to quit. Down, stop.